Good morning, folks. Welcome to the Rangers Reviews morning briefing on Wednesday, the 15th of August. It's the day before the first Europa League game of the season with Lyon coming to Ibrox, and we've got a full schedule looking ahead to that. Joined just by Derek Clark this morning. Derek, how are you today, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks, Joshua. Sun is shining down here in Warrington, so all is good.
All is good, but it's surprisingly not here in Glasgow. But anyway, look, Derek, we'll get into it because we've got a lot to get through. Lots of news, as you can imagine, ahead of what looks to be a really tasty encounter tomorrow night at Ibrox. And the first of which is the Sun reporting that Connor Goldson looks to be back for the game tomorrow. Now, of course, Colin Goldson missed the trip to St Johnstone because he was self-isolating at the weekend, and Leon Balogun and Philip Hollander played in his place, but Hollander picked up an injury of which we don't quite know the extent yet, but certainly looks quite serious, and he was stretchered off, and that was the opinion of Steven Gerrard. It certainly wasn't an optimistic word from the manager after the game on Hollander's injury. So it looks like Goldson will play according to these reports, and if that's true, Derek, for me that's the biggest news, because I don't think we've had a European night without Goldson that springs to mind. And if Hollander hadn't been there, and you did a piece on this, whether or not we were able to get Jack Simpson, and Goldson being in the squad makes life a whole lot easier for everyone, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely does. Yeah, it'd be great to have him in the centre of defence. Of course, he missed on the game on Saturday due to self-isolation. That was his first game, according to my calculations, since the 2-0 win over Stranraer in the Scottish Cup in January 2020. Yeah. So he's been an ever-present. He's an absolute rock at the heart of that defence. And not just that, we've seen with Balogun and Hollander, they haven't played with each other before at St Johnstone, of course, and it showed at times. And having that sort of rock, as I mentioned, at the heart of the defence again will be so beneficial for Rangers, especially going into a game of this magnitude. So, yeah, terrific news. I know Steven Gerrard sounded a bit optimistic at the end of the game on Saturday with regards to Goldson. He says he's hopeful that he could make the game, so it looks like that is going to be the case, which is fantastic news. It's just a case of who's going to play alongside him. You'd imagine more likely than not to be Lyon Balogun, which we've seen before, of course. I think that was the preferred central defensive partnership last season in the Europa League. So what could have been a worrying decision for Steven Gerrard to make, for supporters to be thinking about ahead of Thursday, looks to be settled a little bit now with the return of Goldson. So, it's fantastic news. And he's a big game player, of course. He's not just on the field, but off the field. He's so vocal, isn't he? He's a vice-captain for a reason. There's a reason he's so robust and he plays so many games. And he'll be relishing this match on Thursday night.
Yeah, and good morning to Andrew and Richard. And if you have any questions, folks, do fire them in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to them. I thought as well, Derek, at the start of the first 20 minutes of the St Johnstone game, and looking at the passing map, there was a lot of side doors passing in that first 30 minutes, and I thought one of the reasons of that was that neither Hollander or Balogun was that comfortable stepping into midfield, it seemed, and Goldson is the distributor of the two in defence, whether we be playing with Hollander or Balogun, and neither of those really assumed those roles, I'd say, in the same way that Goldson does, and in the same way that Goldson can ping a ball over the top of the defence. So from that regard as well, to have his distribution will be excellent. Looking at the opposition. There's two different reports about Lyon players coming out yesterday. Lucas Paqueta and Bruno, I think it's Guimarães, I hope I've pronounced that right. Two Brazilian players who look to have been given exemption, look to be given the okay to travel to Glasgow. And Paqueta, for me, Derek, is, and we'll touch on this, but for me, he's their best, arguably the best player, the player that I was hopeful wouldn't make the game. So that's not great news. But it looks like Xherdan Shaqiri, former Liverpool player and current Swiss international, will not make the game, according to L'Équipe, because of not having a complete vaccine passport. And a French radio station as well, a Lyon-based French radio station, Radio Scoop, yesterday reported that Moussa Dembele has a minor muscle injury, so could miss out as well. So whether that's true or not, Derek, obviously we don't know, and we won't know till today. I'll be at Lyon's press conference later, so and we'll hopefully have some indication then. But even if they don't have a full squad, it's a positive for Rangers because, as Mick Beale, as you touched on yesterday, said in his blog, that's arguably the most talented, certainly attacking lineup that Rangers have probably faced. I would certainly say that in Europe. And if Shaqiri and Dembele aren't able to travel, that would certainly be a boost for Rangers, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. They're two quality players. I'm a big fan of Shaqiri. I've loved watching him. I used to watch him all the time. I used to cover the Stoke City games, and he was a standout. And he did well at Liverpool. The games he was given, of course, it was difficult to cement a first-team place, but he's a terrific player. I love watching him. So if he's missing for Lyon, then it's a boost for Rangers. There's no doubt about it. Dembele's an interesting one. Personally, I'd have loved to see him line up against the likes of Goldson and Balogun, and see how he would get on with that combination, because of course when he was playing for Celtic, he was playing against defenders such as Rob Kiernan and Danny Wilson and whoever, and he got a lot of joy. I don't think you would get as much joy, but not that being said, he is still a quality player. He scored a terrific goal the other day there as well for Lyon, so he'll be a big miss for them for sure, but make no bones about it, they're still a quality outfit. They'll be coming to Ibrox playing to win, but I'll always love these European games because teams don't necessarily sit in group stages. They come out and there's usually two teams that like to play football the right way, and we usually get open games. We get nice interchange of passes, and it's pleasing on the eye as opposed to what we're used to with regards to the Scottish Premiership, with teams coming in and sitting in the low block and just happy to take a point from Ibrox. So really looking forward to tomorrow night. Even though we mentioned those players may be missing for Lyon, they'll still have a wide array of talent at their disposal, and Rangers will have to be mindful of that. But Rangers themselves have quality players, of course, and it's a stage where, as you mentioned, Michael Beale in his recent blog has said they've excelled in recent years. They really have. They've really punched above their weight, and they go into these European games with no fear anymore. And not just that, they don't just play and try and hold out and try and get a positive result. They actually take the game to the opponents, and I expect Thursday to be no different. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Rangers obviously quite often play their best football when they've got a little bit of space, which is sometimes after a run of domestic football, I forget what that looks like in a Rangers game. Good morning to Hugh and Vicky and David getting in touch. Andrew's asking who will start left back. For me, Derek, Borna Barisic every day of the week. I think Calvin Bassey's had an impressive start to the season, but if you look at the game of the weekend, even just that start to the second half, where he sold McLaughlin a hospital ball and had another little headless moment as well. I think Bassey's really improved over the last season, and even in pre-season, his distribution's improved, and he did well up against a difficult athletic opponent in Sean Rooney at the weekend. But for me, Borna Barisic is a better player, and he plays. What about you?
I would agree with you, Joshua. But of course, he was on the bench at McDermott Park at the weekend. Were you surprised to see Bassey start ahead of him, or based on the fact that he was away with Croatia with one eye maybe on Thursday? Do you think that's maybe what Steven Gerrard was thinking?
I think so, and then I think as well, you've got to remember that I think rotation at left back and right back will be different because Tavernier is the captain. So it's just not quite on, and that the whole Tavernier-Patterson debate obviously rages on as ever. But I wasn't surprised, and I also wasn't surprised because I think Bassey's just that little bit quicker than Barisic, and Sean Rooney is one of St Johnstone's main offensive outlets, and you've seen that they attacked a lot down the right. So I wasn't too surprised, but for me, he's better. He's a better player and much more experienced. He also loves. I was chatting to someone at the game on Saturday, and there's no one that loves their song being sung as much as absolutely loved it. And he at the start of the game, he walked down the tunnel, and he obviously realised I didn't say thanks to the fans. Went back out and gave them a big applaud and a wave. So he certainly seems to appreciate it, and I think he seems to be in a really good place. So I'd definitely start Borna Barisic for me. I've got Derek. I've been speaking to two different journalists who cover French football for a piece today on the Rangers Review site, and they've given some interesting insights. So I'll just read you a few of these quotes, just looking at how Lyon have started the season, how they set up, which gives us some really good insight into the challenge that Rangers will face tomorrow night. So Jonathan Johnson, who works for CBS Sports, have said that Lyon have started the season fairly slowly. The game against PSG at the weekend will give them an indication. But under Peter Bosz, who's a new manager, they've made to work hard for points so far. And Robin Barney, I think it's Berner, who is a freelance journalist who covers French football. I've said Lyon have started the season pretty dreadfully, although they've managed to win 8 points from 5 games. New head coach Peter Bosz has tried to drastically change their system, and there's no doubt that has caused significant problems. He wants them to play in a highly technical way, passing out from the back and pressing intensely when out of possession, but the squad simply hasn't got the head around it yet. They've been guilty of giving possession away cheaply in dangerous areas, and it's remarkable they've not been punished more. And they're yet to face a proper test yet. And just finally, how do they set up tactically? And Robin again says Bosz wants them to play in a 4-3-3, but after the poor start, they've shifted back to a 4-2-3-1. And he says they've been really weak defending transitions. And this is something that I spoke about in my piece on the site yesterday, looking at how Lyon set up tactically. Although often these situations have been brought upon themselves by giving the ball away in cheap areas, while they have not mastered the press the coach wants, often leaving the back four, which is rather sluggish, exposed. So certainly when I watch Lyon, I mean, if you want an indication as to how they started the season, folks, got plenty of stuff on the website yesterday and today looking at the challenge they'll pose. I think technically, in terms of the players that they've got across that front four, it is as hard a challenge that Rangers have faced. But I would equally say, in terms of the overall opponent, where they are under a new manager, trying to play in a highly technical way, as Robin says, I think Rangers, if Rangers start fast and are able to protect their lead, then I really think they could gain some success. And we've seen this happen loads of times over the last few seasons, Derek, where a big European team comes to Ibrox and Rangers deal with transitions better and start aggressively and start fast. And I think Rangers will win tomorrow. And I'm putting my neck out in the line on that one. But we've seen this before, and you're confident of Rangers in these matches, aren't you?
Yeah, Hugh gets in touch and says they've got a fantastic manager, and they do. It's, of course, he was in charge of Leverkusen when they came to Ibrox and got that result and looked very impressive. But like you say, that they have had a sort of disjointed start to the campaign. But Rangers can't take a team like this lightly. I know they beat them in, of course, the pre-season last season, and they played really well that day. Rangers, of course, in what was it, the Viola Cup or whatever it was called. Yeah. But listen, they're a cracking outfit. But Rangers usually, in the main, bring their A game to Ibrox in this competition. That being said, of course, the victory over Alashkert wasn't the best. The performance, they lost to Malmo at Ibrox this season, of course, as well. So they're going to have to improve their European performance considerably to get anything from this game tomorrow. I think it's wide open. I think it's 50-50, to be honest with you. I think it's anyone's game. But it's got the makings of a right cracker. There's the amount of players on each side that rise to the occasion, and that, I mean, the Rangers players, we all know, love this competition. Hopefully they've got the disappointment of the Champions League exit out of their system. I think just stumbling over the line against Alashkert, you've hoped like that. It's a clean slate now. It's back to Europa League group stage action, and that'll give them the kick on. I think that the crowd will be vitally important tomorrow as well. I think, as ever, they always turn up and make themselves heard. So I think it's going to be a right spectacle tomorrow. And like you say, if Rangers get their noses in front, I can see them going on and winning this game. There's not many teams that can come away with Ibrox with a victory in Europe of late. Of course, I mentioned their Malmo, Slavia Prague comes to mind, of course, at the tail end of last season, which was bitterly disappointing. But that aside, not many teams come here and take all 3 points. So let's get the makings of a cracker. I think the first goal is going to be vitally important. If Rangers get that, I can see them going on and winning the game.
Ross Campbell getting in touch, talking about Ross Wilson's comments about more pace and athleticism from signings. This seems to be a game. This seems like it might have been for games at this level. Do you think we'll see a start for Lundstrom, Sakala or Wright? I tend to think that Lundstrom will start tomorrow. Derek, I don't know about
really?
You. Yeah, I think it. Well, I think
wow.
I think the last few games, right, when Lundstrom's come on, he's done well, and when he's got space in front of him, he's a different player because he's used to it. When you've seen Lundstrom, when has Lundstrom had a difficult game? He had a difficult game against Dundee United away, and when there was a really flat midfield and he was tasked with setting the tempo. He had a difficult game against Alish Kurt when he was part of a double pivot, which with the whole opposition in front of him. And again, he was tasked with playing through. You see him come on against Ross County and St Johnstone and Celtic, and I think that's what that driving run for Sakala's chance that was eventually offside. We don't really have another midfielder, I would say, that makes that type of run. You might have a Kamara or an Aribo that can jink their way through, but you see in terms of power and their ability to make up space and transition, I think Lundstrom will be really effective over time. And I kind of fancy, and this comes into as well how I think Rangers will set up, because I think when Rangers have struggled in Europe, when they've been picked apart by teams, is when they've played. So you look at how Malmo's first goal came up in Sweden, how it came to be. They completely bypassed the middle of the pitch. They only had one player, and you can see. I feel like I've written about this 20 times, so I'm repeating myself. But if you go back and watch that first goal, Lewicki, the right midfielder, is pushed out to the right side with Berget so that they can overload the right flank. In the same way that Slavia Prague, for their first goal at Ibrox, completely bypassed the centre because Rangers protect that and it's congested, and then managed to create an overload in the wide areas. Now Lyon are strong out there, and they play a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, and they've got good players out there on either flank. So I kind of fancy Rangers to what they've done on occasion: start the game really fast, but then go into more of a 4-4-2 mid block, just to give that little bit more protection, so that the midfield isn't as exposed if they have to shuffle across. If this tactic is used against Rangers again, which has been the case, as I say, because they're so effective at protecting, and it's a compliment to Rangers because teams are now recognising this is a good European side. This tactic is really effective in terms of blocking and overloading and retaining an offensive threat with keeping the attackers high. So we're going to exploit it by just completely bypassing the middle. So I fancy a Rebo to maybe go into the forward line with Kent and Morelos, because Hadji obviously isn't there. And then Lundstrom to be in there with Davies and Kamara, and Rangers to really press Lyon at the start of the game, and then have the ability to fall back and have that little bit more protection in midfield, so that doesn't happen what's happened against Slavia and Malmo. But you don't fancy Lundstrom to play. I can tell by your reaction.
No, I can understand your reasoning behind it, and I can see Gerrard possibly going for it. I'm just not sure it's the right move. I know you said he's came on in the last few games, and he saw games out, if you like. I still don't think I still wouldn't fancy him starting the game alongside Davies and Kamara. I just don't think. There's a number of times that, of course, Alish Kurt springs to mind. He has to get that out of his system, of course. And to be fair to him, he's got his head down and he's came on when asked it and done what's been asked of him when he's come on. But for me, I would still have my doubts. I know on paper he would offer what you just said, Joshua, and he's full of run and endeavour and work rate. He likes looking in front of him and things like that. But I'm just not sure Gerrard will opt for that. I think he'll stick with his tried and tested Davies, Kamara and Aribo. But then, like you say, with no Hadji, he may be forced into that alteration perhaps. So it'll be interesting to see what the team is. I know that Ross mentions possible starts for Sakala or Wright. I don't think either of those two will be given the nod. Sakala,
Wright perhaps. Wright's done well in Europe, hasn't he?
But I mean, he's been out for some time, hasn't he? He's missed the last few weeks, hasn't he? Sakala, for me, jury's out on him now. I'm not writing him off or anything like that. I just feel that he's a few weeks away from getting used to how this Rangers team plays. I think he needs to bulk up a little bit just for to cope with the demands of Scottish football. I can see him coming on most definitely on Thursday night. There's no doubt about it. But I can't see either of those two starting. But Lundstrom, possibly, he could possibly get the nods. Of course, there's Arfield as well. Of course, that Steven Gerrard often likes to deploy in these European games. So it'll be interesting. I think that third midfield position is one that could be up for grabs. I think Davies and Kamara are stick on in these sorts of games. But and in the front three, are you discounting Roof then, Joshua? Do you think that he's not going to get the
no, I actually completely forgot about Roof because he's not so far. So I guess it depends more if Rangers just want that an extra bit of pace and don't want to go for the kind of 1-2 with Kent behind Morelos and Roof. I think maybe that works better in specific games and maybe in a European game and a Rebo or even a Wright would work better. Do you know what, Derek? I don't know. The reason as well I'm thinking is if Lyon don't look that great in transition, he'd probably rather have either, I don't know if Hadji's available, rather have the kind of pace of his passing, of Hadji, the way he speeds up moves, the way Aribo can kind of change the pace of the game a little bit, or Wright maybe would rather have them. As opposed to the front two of Morelos and Roof, which I think even times against Celtic, you can tell they're maybe not always able to expose the space that's there. Maybe it's the game for Sakala, who knows? I mean, it's hard to know, but this is good. This is why we're not the manager, because we don't know. But
Hey, listen, it's a good headache for Steven Gerrard and the coaching staff to have at the end of the day, that they're not short of quality players. So it'll be one I'm sure they'll be thinking about today and tomorrow. But whoever they put out is capable, I think, of getting 3 points.
Absolutely great. Right, Derek, we will leave it there. We have lots on the site as ever for you folks. Lots of Lyon previews for myself yesterday and today. We've got an excellent piece on Yanis Hadji, an analysis on his role in midfield by Craig Vickers, which is excellent and really detailed. So you can head over and get that on the site. Remember, you can subscribe to the Rangers Review for just $2.99 a month to support top quality journalism. We'll have all your post-match reaction as well tomorrow, and then looking ahead to the weekend as well as the games come thick and fast, and then it's midweek and then the weekend again, just as we like it. So you can subscribe, keep up to date with us on our socials, and we will be back tomorrow with a full match preview ahead of the game with Lyon. Until then, have a great rest of your